Welcome to LCS Talks. I'm Berkley Glazer, and I am the principal of Langley Christian Middle School.
And I'm Kevin Merchandani, Director of Instruction for K-12.
And welcome to Season 5, Faith Identity and our core programs. Today we are talking with our athletics program, and who's on our panel today, Kevin?
Yeah, we have Terry Neufeld. He is our athletics director. Terry, give us a hi.
Hi there.
Awesome. We have Jon Kuehl, our middle school athletics director.
How's it going?
And Jon Mayan, high school athletics director.
Great to be here.
Awesome. We finally got you guys all into one room. We were kind of joking around just before we started. It's been a month and a half trying to corral these guys into the same room together. So
Yeah.
They're busy men.
They are.
But we're happy that you're here today. So we're going to start things off with the first question. Tell us your God story, the Cole's Notes version, on how you got here, how you ended up at LCS. So let's start with Mr. Mayan.
Sure. Well, I've been in education for about 23 years now, and raised in a Christian home, actually a pastor's kid. There's some good points to that and some other challenging points to that. But Mom was a teacher. Always thought, that was an opportunity for me to invest in young people, enjoyed being around kids. So I actually started in elementary. And then eventually, over time, went from teaching grade 3 to middle school. Did some time as an elementary school principal, and then found my way here, really just looking for a change. And it was teaching part-time in high school. Actually, the first time I came here, though, was sitting across from Jon Kuehl, telling him I'm interested in coaching the grade 8 boys basketball. But I had a few conditions. One, we had to practice more than 3 times a week. And we had to go in more than 2 tournaments. And then I said, then I will coach this group of boys. Of course, he welcomed me, and that was the first connection I actually had with LCS. It was my oldest son going into grade 8 here and me volunteering to coach basketball.
Awesome, Jon.
All right, let's go over to Jon Kuehl, middle.
Let's see. Probably similar story in the sense of you always have that one teacher that kind of really makes an impact on your life. And I think it was probably my grade 3 teacher who told me that I'd never graduate high school. That's when I knew I needed to be a teacher. And I said, there's got to be a better way. And so I did have a really good, actually a learning support teacher that really inspired me, walked me through some pretty challenging times as a student. And I think that connection point really brought me to want to be a teacher. And I think God's really put me in that role as a teacher to be somebody that's going to impact kids and a wide range of kids. And so sports is one of those things that I really always enjoyed doing, and it's been an opportunity for me to not always have those academic kids that I have in class, but now I've got those athletic kids that sometimes struggle in the classroom, and it's a way for me to incorporate my skills and abilities to show them ways that they can be who they are, the way that God's kind of created them to be. So that's kind of my story of how I ended up in Langley specifically. Was, hey, I grew up around this area, and Langley was a place that I kind of really wanted to be a part of, and I got a job opportunity here at a pretty young age to be athletic director, and I was pretty excited about that. So God opens doors, and you take that door, you walk right through it. So
Awesome. All right, and Terry from the elementary.
I kind of didn't have a choice. I have 2 parents that are teachers, and so I kind of always knew I'd be a teacher. I tried really hard to go the athletic therapy route and physio, and realized I didn't want to spend my time with injured people or old people. So I really enjoy working with kids, and it kind of led me to a teaching path. With LCS, my family spent some time overseas teaching, and we knew that when we came back, we wanted more opportunities for our kids, and we wanted a strong community, and so we enrolled them here, and so they've been here. This is their 3rd year, and then both my wife and I were able to get jobs here this year, so that's been kind of fun being in the same building together for the first time. And so that's kind of what brought us here, and it's been really cool to have all 6 of us as part of the community and be welcomed here.
Great.
Yeah, great to hear from each of you a little bit of your connection to LCS and how your faith has impacted the work that you are doing currently. We're going to hear in this episode, and I'll frame for our listeners a bit of our conversation together today about the relationship between faith and athletics, how our faith is so integral in the work that we're doing here at LCS. We desire to be a community with 3 core values, connecting, thriving, and equipping. And we're going to hear a little bit about each of those different aspects. But to throw it out there to our panel here, let's talk a little bit about our athletics program in terms of faith formation, faith development. What is a biblical view of athletics? What does that look like at each of your campuses? Let's start with Terry. We'll go with the elementary first and move our way up.
Basically, since my time playing at Trinity, I've had the idea that sport can be worship. And I had many debates with people, but I remember listening to somebody come and play us from Athletes in Action, and he said as a young kid, sports is all about physical. And then as you get older, it becomes more about mental. And he said he didn't hit his true stride until he realized that sport is also spiritual. And so once we start to be able to worship God through our sport, to actually worship Him in our interactions, worship Him the way we compete even, we don't really reach that pinnacle of sport success in our Christian culture. And so I love thinking about it that way, that He's given us these abilities and the way that we use them, not just in winning and in competing, but also just in that heart change of how can we be positive competitors and how can we be just really glorifying Him through what we do.
Yeah, we often think of worship as sometimes about performance, but there's a formative part of worship too, of practice and becoming more like Christ and growing in relationship too. And we do that in the elementary program where we're building this foundation of relationship with God and faith. Athletics has as much to do with faith as reading our Bible, and those things are ways that we connect with God and worship Him too. So appreciate you sharing that perspective, Terry. Jon Kuehl, middle school.
Yeah, so I would say middle school is a lot about exposure into the first times of competition for a lot of these kids, and I love that competition really can bring out the worst in people. The very upset or frustration when it comes to losing, right? So much of our identity sometimes is wrapped up in wins and losses, and I think it's such a great opportunity for us to dig into what is your identity? Who are you? And what makes you a successful person? And the 3 things that our school kind of is driven on, right, is this idea of being connected, to thrive, and to equip. And I love the chance for us in middle school to really work on connecting kids together in a way that is more positive, a way that kids really at times can struggle with blaming others for a failure or blaming themselves for a failure. And us really coming together and realizing that we are far more similar than we are different, and that when we work together as a Christian community, great things can happen. And it's not necessarily a win all the time, but it's a way that we can come together and honor God in all of the things that we do. A lot building off of that worship idea of what we can do with our bodies. And then, we're trying to equip them with the skills and things that we need, but really we're working on that connecting and thriving as a Christian community.
Yeah, thanks, Jon. I think it's 1 Corinthians 6 that talks about this idea that our bodies are actually the ones that participate in worship. I mean, we won't get into the big exegetical work of it too, but our bodies are temples, right? That reflection of, in Genesis, God creates, and we are the living temple in the world, and we go out into the world, and we're ambassadors, and we steward the gifts and the abilities that He's given us. So it's almost like we're these living temples engaging with one another, where we get to connect with God in the way that we honor one another with integrity, and we steward our bodies. And we've done a little bit of a series on that, talking about social emotional development in the middle school too. So if listeners are interested in checking that out, that would be a great place to explore some more of those ideas further. So thanks, Jon.
Yeah.
Over to Jon Mayan.
Yeah, really, I think a biblical view that we can look at the high school athletics is really the giftings that different people have. And really to use those gifts, discover those gifts, and in a team setting, see yourself as one member that is making that contribution amongst many, and really have the opportunity through athletics to glorify God. I love when we can talk, and as a senior boys basketball coach, about how we can give glory through competition, through our actions, through striving and competing and supporting one another. I remember my own playing days, and really I don't think there was a connection to my faith life, which, looking back, is something that I want to do as a coach, where they can see their identity as a Christian athlete, where they can understand what gifts they've been given and how they can use them to His glory. And then also just the relationships take on a whole different meaning. I think when you have people with the common faith, striving towards a common goal, it's such an awesome experience to be a part of a group like that.
Thanks, John. So I'll throw this out to the group. Can faith be practiced? And if so, what does that look like in our athletics program? We'll jump in.
I think routines and ritual are an important part. I think starting your practice with prayer. I think talking about your own faith life and your own faith story with your athletes is really important. Sitting down one-on-one and not only telling them about their rolling playing time, but perhaps how are they doing in their relationships, in their walk of faith. Having athletes lead those types of opportunities too at the senior level is really important as they figure out what their identity is and how this fits in pursuing athletics. I think one question that I often ask athletes in a high performance athletics class we ask this too, is pursuing your athletics bringing you further away or closer to the person you want to be? And you are a child of Christ and you are made in His image. So is pursuing this, and sometimes athletics can be a selfish pursuit, is this bringing closer to the person that you aspire to be?
Yeah, it sounds a lot like our learner attribute being purposefully disciplined, which is these practices that are individual and they also have communal impact as well too. So how do my actions actually impact my team? How does that discipline get ingrained in the ways, the rhythms, the patterns in my own life to make me more like Christ? So that's helpful. What others think?
Well, I was actually going to say a little bit more about the learner attributes. Just that idea that some people believe that athletics and the classroom are so separate. They're so uniquely different. And the reality is much of the stuff that we're trying to do and to teach during the time that we have those kids in our as a coach in our classroom or in the gym or even in the pitch or wherever you're at is exactly the same, and we're hitting the same learner attributes that we would in the classroom. And I think when it's the classic case where if I go to church, that's when I'm going to be in church. I'm going to do the stuff in church that I'm supposed to be doing because I'm at church. And then when I go home, I'm going to do my own thing. I think the more that we bring this idea of who we are in Christ and the learner attributes of like what makes us Christian people, and we bring that into all facets of their life, I think they become more. Kids realize more about who they are and their faith and who their identity is based on a much more solid foundation when it's more about who they are in all aspects of their life, not just certain places.
Awesome, John.
For me, coaching and teaching is always disciple making, and we're replicating ourselves in the way that we treat people. And so anytime I'm interacting with a student, they're watching, and that's what becomes normal for them. And so if I'm belittling someone for something they've done, then they see, oh, that's normal. That's how we treat a teammate. That's how we treat a fellow classmate. And so trying to really access them that way where I'm actually the example. And I'm not going to put someone down. I'm not going to laugh at somebody or I'm going to build somebody up. And the language in the gym in the elementary is always like, how can we be a positive competitor and a positive teammate? And so you can try hard, you can aim to win, but there's ways that we do that, and there's respect and there's class in that. And so just trying to really, at a young age, teach them that you can work hard and you can try to win, but if you have no character behind that, then what's the point?
Yeah. Anytime you can model or point to a particular time that something that's positive happened. It allows those kids to see that, and it becomes more real to them. I think that's pretty awesome.
If I reflect back at my time as being a coach, because when you're in this business, you end up coaching, and how it's kind of, you actually feel a little guilty if, like what Terry was saying, as a coach, if you get mad at a kid or if you get mad on the court, and what are you showing, and are you being that role model for Christ? And so it's important for us to really have coaches who can really emulate what we want them to do on the court or on the field. So how do you as athletic directors kind of help coaches become that person?
Should we start with asking them how many technical fouls they've gotten first, and then go into them talking about how
I
they put
only
their
had
coaches?
I only had one this season.
This season.
This season. I usually average one a season.
Yeah. How do you work with your coaches?
You know what? I think them, partly it's through conversation. I think it's them understanding that they are mentors for our student athletes, that Terry mentioned too, and Jon touched on this too, that they are watching you. So your actions often speak louder than your words, and how you're either dealing with an athlete, possibly dealing with a parent, dealing with an opponent. What through your action shows what's important and valued in your practice setting, in your relationships with those athletes as well too. And those need to then reflect, and there's times I know when my actions maybe didn't reflect a Christ-like attitude and just a disposition, but to ensure that they know that they're cared for, and they know what that at the end of the day, that you are as concerned about them as individuals and as Christians as much as you are in developing them to be better athletes. And I think that can get easily lost. In some cases, you can talk about coaches that are more transactional, and this is a transaction we're happening. I'm making you a better athlete, you're going to get me wins. Where we're looking for transformational coaches, where really make a truly impact in the growth and development of that entire person. And obviously that's a huge part of that, is their growth as a person of faith too.
And like that is our hardest thing to try to get coaches, period. But now get a coach that's going to be a transformational coach. Having someone consistent that's, whether it's a community coach or you have a teacher that's a coach, I find it's usually easier to get a coach that's a teacher to be a little bit more transformational, just because they're part of the school system and they understand that a little bit more.
Yeah.
We do have a lot of community coaches, and we do have a lot of conversations with those community coaches, and that idea of bringing them alongside and walking with them so that they understand really where we're at as a school and what the importance of wins is compared to like the core value of like, we really want to grow these kids into Christ-like followers in all areas of their life. And that is a hard thing. It's a hard thing when you've got pressures to win a tournament, and you're might leave a couple kids off the team or off the playing time. It's a tough thing to do when you may be in a season where you're always losing, and you get the kids that are upset. And so there's a lot involved in this, and it's a very difficult thing. But it is, when it works, it's beautiful, and when it doesn't, it's ugly.
Yeah.
And I think that's something we desire, and we are constantly working harder and harder to get better at.
Yeah. So these next sets of questions are going to be a bit of a rapid fire. You're in the All-Star game and you're in the skills contest. So we're just going to fire them over to you. The underlying piece that we want to hear about is, how do we as Langley Christian School create a culture of faith and athletics in partnership with families? We all have a different responsibility to play. We're all part of a community that forms faith, and we're using the athletics to be a bit of a vehicle to make sure that kids have opportunities for faith formation. So would love to look at this cultural piece. How do we help families to grow as members of creating this athletics culture that's deeply faith informed? And how do we also participate in ways that these practices become more and more a part of our community. The things that we do when we equip coaches, when we meet with teachers, you're having those practices with students, I would love to hear those come alive in some of the conversation here. So we're going to throw them over to you. How do we help, and this is question number one, how do we help parents to grow as great supporters and fans of their kids?
You want to talk about the handbook?
Well, I was gonna go to it's funny because whenever I do the kind of the parent orientation, we talk about their role. Yeah. Really, they have a defined role, and their most important job is to tell their kids they love to watch them play. If they just do that, they're doing a wonderful job in showing their support and unconditional love, regardless of how their child is performing. And that's an important caveat, because as soon as performance becomes a part of, hey, this is when you get more praise, it starts to shift a child's identity to, I need to perform in order to seek this approval from a parent. And it can be an unconscious thing that happens as well too. So know your role. I would recommend that parents, and we may get into this too, and just cut me off, it's too late, but don't become the coach. There is a coach already, unless you are the coach, only because it can confuse an athlete, and it also can, at times, and this may not be intentional either, undermine what the coach is trying to do. And so be their biggest, in a nutshell, be their biggest supporter and biggest fan.
Awesome. Thanks to Ed. Kuehl?
No, I agree. I think it's a tough one as even like a parent and watching your kid on the court and knowing that their coach has been saying certain things on the ride home. Do you reinforce that, or you're just like, hey, that was fun, like, well done, enjoyed watching you? And I think I know for my own kids, they do not want to hear me tell them that their form was off on a particular shot, or their serve was ridiculously terrible because they need to get their arm a little higher when they hit the ball. So I know I've had many discussions with my own kids, and I continually try to do better, but it does make a difference when we just are there to support and be an advocate for our kids.
Mm-hmm. I had a friend, and he said on the ride home from all of his games growing up, his dad would say two things: did you work hard? Did you have fun? Mm-hmm. And this guy, he went on, he played professional basketball, he had a great career, and that's all his dad asked him on the ride home. And I've always, especially as I coach all my kids' teams, and it's a ton of time, and I really try to have that separation where I coach at practice and games, and in the ride home, I'm a parent. Mm-hmm. Did you have fun? Did you work hard? And that's honestly, parents just need to support. That's like what Mayan was saying, like, just be a supporter, let the coach coach.
Yeah, I love that. David Brooks wrote How to Know a Person, talks about conversation is the relationship, and conversation is the space for formation. So yeah, what are things that parents can be talking about in addition to some of those things during those car rides, those long trips, waiting for tournaments, in between? I mean, I'll just throw this in there that it's really easy for the cell phone to come out or the radio to get turned on. So what could those conversations look like before, during, or after sports events?
Well, I think let your child do the leading. A lot of it involves listening and maybe even asking, hey, do you want to talk about how the game went, or how are you feeling? Many kids do not want to debrief, the X and O's of the game, but asking things too that also maybe aren't related to the outcome. So just, did you have fun out there? Or complimenting them. You loved your effort, loved how hard you were working. But most of all, again, let them be the lead if they want to talk about the game, if they want to debrief.
Yeah, I've also often asked my kids, give me something funny that happened over, especially in a away tournament. Getting back to the idea of your team as a community, and reflecting more on what kind of relationships were created and stories that were that basically came about from funny things that happened, because there's always entertaining stories that from away tournaments that bond those kids together.
Definitely. I mean, I think back to memories. Do you still drive that Odyssey?
No comment.
No comment? We had great tournaments when you would have coached. I remember the roads were snowy. We were on the island. We had all sorts of great stories and conversations coming back. I've got great memories of sitting in the front seat. Were we allowed to sit in the front seat?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You were in grade 10.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
all good.
Okay.
It's all
That's
good.
right.
Did you wear seatbelts back then?
Yeah, were we allowed to wear seatbelts back then? But yeah, those are so formational for a whole team. You think about character being formed and those relationships being developed, and that's the site where faith is able to be nurtured. So
Absolutely.
those are huge. Yeah, Terry, thanks, Dad.
Yeah, I've always kind of had the perspective where I have 4 kids, they're all in sports, and so the car time is like our time. And so a lot of times it's not sports at all.
Yeah.
It's like that's when we connect, that's when we can talk. And so, yeah, sometimes it's sports, sometimes it's, what's going on at school. Sometimes like, why are you upset? And so like Mayan was saying, like let them lead, but, kind of a little bit of prompt sometimes. You need to give them the opportunity. But yeah, I think really having that time open, you don't always have to have AirPods in or a podcast going, or just allow that time to be important time.
Yeah, there's got to be something about like the routine. Hey, here's our standard questions, and then also just like listening for those moments of maybe there's something more.
Yeah.
Learning the art of conversation and asking questions too. So
Yeah, sometimes we do highs and lows. What are the highs and lows of the day, right? That's all it takes.
Yeah, tell me more about this.
Yeah.
Right? So, for sure.
Yeah, awesome.
Awesome. Let's take it out of the car into the gymnasium. So we've got a captive audience. We got our parents here. So let's take this opportunity to talk about what it means to be a good fan, and how does their behavior in the auditorium affect us as a school?
Yeah, I think it goes back to knowing what their role is. They are not the referee either. They are not the coach. It's funny, I've had a conversation with, and this is a minority of parents, but they sometimes think walking in a gymnasium is like going to a Canucks game or any other professional sport, when in fact it's an educational context that we're doing where kids are learning skills. And in some cases, the officials are learning skills too. I know as a coach, I'm always learning. So to decide, hey, I'm going to either coach from the stands or yell at officials, I call it assisting officials from the stands, really isn't helpful. Not only does you're not going to get a call as a coach, I'm just like, as soon as I start yelling at an official, it's not going to help my case. But it models to the kids what we don't want them to do. And that is to try to control things they really can't control. So if at all possible, again, that being their number one fan, being supportive, leaving the officials to officiate and the coaches to coach. Yeah,
and for me in middle school, I think a lot of our 6s and 7s, we have games, but they're just times to be exposed to the sport. It's not they're not ranking the teams afterwards, and you certainly see some teams that we will play will come in and the attitudes of kids is just horrific. It's they're angry about every single call that is made, and you can see where that comes from. It's the parents on the sidelines. If they're into it in the same way that Mayan's saying here, it just bodes really poorly for that team. It oozes out and becomes a part of who those kids are. I think if we really are passionate about being intentional about who we are and how God can rule in our lives in all areas, I think our parents really need to do a great job of being supporters in who their kids are, and not in the booing, right, or in the frustration of that, and recognize, hey, these are growing opportunities where kids can grow in their skill, but also grow in who they are, and what kind of relationships do you want to have with the coaches? What kind of relationships do the kids want to have with the referees? What is it that you're displaying, and how is that being emulated through your own kids? So I think it's just a really a good thing to keep in mind as a parent.
Yeah, I think a lot of what it means to be a fan is revealing of our character and what we are trying to work through. And I guess I'll share a little bit more that I think when we come into a gymnasium as parents watching the game, we're not trying to relive our glory days we're not trying to push our kids further than we did, and to encourage them to fulfill some unfulfilled kind of opportunity in our sports background, where I think a lot of what our culture is trying to be is reveal where God is working on us and trying to help form us. And so I think as we can encourage families to be really positive contributors to a sports culture, a culture of faith, a culture where we are giving students opportunity to perform and to get feedback and to be coached, that we actually want Christ to work on all of the different aspects, from the practices to the driving of kids on routine, to the gymnasiums, to the watching, to the post game, to the trust that you as families have in us as we develop a program from K to 12. So to maybe wrap up with our time here, would be great to hear about a story that is impactful to you as a coach here at LCS, or thinking about what this might look like for LCS to continue growing a culture of faith and athletics. What's an example of a story of change or transformation? That word transformation's come up a few times, or impact that comes to mind.
Well, my context is a little different with the younger kids. My eldest is grade 8 and played volleyball this year, and I thought it was a really great year for her because the coach was really intentional. And so they had, 4:30 games, which meant they had this huge block of time where they could just be hanging out. And she was really intentional about like homework time, devotions. The girls took turns leading the team in devotions. And I just thought the care and intentionality that was put into that was really, really important. For the volleyball came, and they had the practices and they did that, but there was a special bond that was created through kind of the time away from the court and away from practice that I thought was really cool.
Awesome, Terry. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Kuehl?
For me, would probably be there's a couple moments I have with certain students that maybe a real frustration for other teachers, and they've come alongside me, and I've come alongside them and seen some of their gifts and abilities that they have, maybe more in the athletic realm than in the academic realm, and I have encouraged them to try out or to come into the sporting team and give it a whirl, give it a try, and they have, and it turns out that through that they're able to find a little bit more structure and discipline in their lives and find who they are a little bit more, be grounded more in who they are in Christ, and to see that change. In the relationship part, they were able to trust a little bit more about their coaches, which then in turn actually helped a lot in the classroom as well. And this was a kid that was not really one of those. It was one of those kids that you're at risk to not making it all the way through. And it ended up this kid did really well once they went up to high school. So I think that for me that was there's a few of those stories that you just come along a kid, you encourage them. They try something new, and they're able to honor God with those actions and the things they're able to do athletically, and it turns out to be something that changes their life in a lot of other ways as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I would have to just go back to the relationship of being a coach with your athletes. I started by mentioning the first time I sat down was to ask the coach that grade 8 group of boys with my oldest son. I ended up coaching them, and I didn't mean to do this, to be honest. I ended up coaching them 5 years, so I ended up coaching them all throughout. And the bond I think I have with that group, I've been to one of their weddings. One of them lives in my basement. And even it's funny when we come back and have like open gyms during the summer, like it's hugs, and it's like, these are guys that are really were a formative part of me being at the school, but also me impacting their lives. And let me tell you, they were not perfect kids.
They were not.
I think I was warned, like, you better watch out for a few of these boys. And I
may have said that.
What do you mean? A few, I think, to be honest, needed some a father figure in their life too. Mm-hmm. So that was important, and just to see them grow and develop, and just the relationship was it impacted me, and I think in turn it impacted them.
Yeah, definitely. I'm definitely a product of some of the LCS early days, and I think we were still single A when we were getting going. We had lots of second and third place provincials, no banners up there. But the communities that were around us, and the memories and the ways of engaging in this sense of being purposely disciplined was so formative. I think about now, as I've had injuries and not able to play basketball and soccer, I'm able to try other things and see my faith come alive in those opportunities as well too. So I think this equipping goes much further than just, hey, we can throw you a basketball and you can shoot some hoops. Like, this is a broader way of being equipped for life, and I think it's awesome that we have opportunity to support faith development in a more holistic kind of way too. I was even just thinking, Terry, you had mentioned earlier today that some of your friends and connections when you played ball at Trinity are also ones that you're doing life together with, and your families are connected, definitely. And engaged in Bible study as well too. So this has been a great conversation to hear about your stories and experiences with our athletics program. We know that athletics is a big part of our core programs and the work that we do, and we want it to be faith formational as well. Also, just to throw in there that Jon Mayan just coined one of the terms that we'll probably always know you as, which is athletic director emeritus. And
True.
we're very grateful,
like it.
Jon. I know, right? It has a distinguished feel to it, but we are grateful for your contributions, Jon, in building high school pieces. And we just look forward to seeing more student athletes learn and grow and have impact in our world today. So it's been a great conversation to hear from each of you. And we hope our listeners will continue to engage and explore some of these practices that the three of you have talked about.
Yeah, we really want to thank the panel today. You guys have shared some great insights for our listeners and our parent community, just to how to be involved correctly and properly in sports and athletics, and just really shed some light on what one of our core programs is around here, which is athletics. So we really appreciate you guys for doing that today. And thank you, listeners, for listening. And we want to remind you, we do want to be interactive. So if you would like to shoot us a question or any comments, you can reach us at podcast@langleychristian.com. Thanks for listening.